This morning I am pleased to introduce Jennifer Pasqua, who is the reporter and weekend anchor at WZZM here in Grand Rapids. She will be acting as our moderator, and as for that, I will turn it over to her. Thank you.
Well, good morning to all of you. It's so great to see so many faces here and even some young adults part of the crowd this morning. I want to just take a moment, because I'm hearing a lot of wonderful comments, to thank the Gilmore Catering for providing breakfast this morning, as well as Eastern Floral. So a round of applause if we could. I am very pleased to be part of this panel discussion. Over at WZZM 13 News, we've been working to bring light to this issue. Since last summer, we have shared many stories, from child sex trade to a viral Facebook post that had to do with human trafficking that police say was a hoax, and how the Michigan Human Trafficking Commission wrote a report recommending new state laws, and I'm sure we'll be discussing that in a little bit. But this is an issue that many are passionate about, and many want to, of course, see positive change. And this is the reason why many of you are here today. And as we proceed on to the discussion, I'd like each of you to make a mental note, if you would, about what you want to learn about human trafficking and how you want to take what you learn to actually do something about it. So I'd like to now turn it over to our panel and do a brief introduction so you know who's sitting here with us today and who we appreciate taking time out of their very busy schedules. First, we have Chief Deputy Attorney General Carol Isaac, has held her position since January 2003, and now has been the Chief Deputy for two of Michigan's Attorney Generals. She manages the operation of nearly 500-person state department. The Attorney General's office, for those who don't know, is the largest firm in Michigan and serves as a legal counsel for all of the state government as well as civil and criminal needs of Michigan citizens. So thank you, Carol, for being here today. Thank you. State Senator Judy Emmons from the 33rd District is the state's leading voice on human trafficking. She's been working at the grassroots level with real-life survivors to craft legislation aimed at stopping this crime. We also have Andy Soper. He is the Director of Mobilization for Mars Hills Bible Church, the founder of the Manassa Project. He works with abused and neglected children in both residential and community programs at Wedgwood Christian Services, where he developed programming to address the commercial sexual exploitation of minors. Leslie King is the founder and director of Sacred Beginnings. Her incredible story about her journey to escape human trafficking has been recognized throughout West Michigan. She is a Grand Rapids Woman of the Year 2008 nominee, a YWCA Advocate of the Year award winner, and a Health Hero Award winner as well. And finally, we have Becky McDonald. She's the president and founder of WAR, which stands for Women at Risk International. The organization works with safe houses, orphanages, rescue groups, and other agencies in the U.S. and 40 other countries to locate and try to intervene to help women and girls who are being exploited in the sex trade. So we're going to toss it over now to our panel, and if you would begin just giving a brief statement as we begin this conversation. Go ahead.
Is this on?
I believe so. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming this morning, and more than that, thank you for inviting the Attorney General's office to speak. This morning I do bring remarks on behalf of Attorney General Bill Schuette, and we'll start with saying that this has been a key initiative, a key feature of his administration. When he came to the office, he did some very substantial things to address the issue of human trafficking in Michigan. First of all, he established the very first prosecution unit for human trafficking, and also the first victims advocate for the state within the Attorney General's office. He continues to serve in a national capacity with other Attorney Generals on executive committees to address human trafficking. And importantly, he co-chaired the commission, the first commission in Michigan for human trafficking. There are points I'd like to make about this commission and what he has done. It is because we often hear that the Capitol doesn't work well together, meaning the Congress. This is probably one of the best examples you'll ever see of how it works correctly and cooperatively at the Capitol. When the Attorney General was asked to do this commission, co-chair it with the House of Representatives and Representative Heisey, he agreed to do that, and he agreed more than that. He agreed to put his efforts and his staff's efforts in producing what we would call a comprehensive view of the status of human trafficking within the state of Michigan. The report that you heard about is in fact released. It was done within 7 months and has just won a national award, in fact, for its production. Why was it important to do this? It is important to do the commission and to do a report because we now have a shared understanding of human trafficking. When we looked at this, we wanted to do it comprehensively. We addressed this in 5 different ways with subcommittees. Those subcommittees address data, they address legislation, victim services, public awareness, and can't remember our last subcommittee, it'll come to me. But importantly in this, we had 11 members of the legislature working directly with us. We had our universities, we had law enforcement, we had the governor's support, we had our departments and state government together. So very comprehensively, we brought all of the stakeholders. We vetted everything continuously for 6 months. We had multiple meetings with all subgroups and with the entire commission. And at the end of this, we produced a very comprehensive report as well as recommendations for legislation. And you're going to hear more about that from an expert in that area sitting next to me. But legislation is actively moving within the legislature, and we will see what our next step is. It's important to know that this report covers a lot of area, but importantly, it covers what we don't know. Right now, it's difficult to understand how much human trafficking we really have. We conclude that it is probably underreported. It is, we base that on our research that we did, and there's a lot of really good research here in cooperation with our universities to find out what we do know and what we don't know and what we might need to do as we go forward. That being said, I want to assure you that this is really a problem. If you look nationally and internationally, you see a lot of data, $32 billion problem, and that's the criminal enterprise that is growing very, very rapidly. We have millions upon millions of people trafficked in sex trafficking and in labor trafficking. It is prevalent in Michigan. As you know, you can look on your media. I'll just give you 2 really close examples. The last FBI sweep in 2013 revealed that in a 76-city, 3-day sweep, East Michigan, Detroit, had the largest number of pimps arrested, and we had the 2nd largest number of victims recovered. If you look at the latest data that deals with the Super Bowl, you will again see this issue of human trafficking revealed. And within those victims recovered, the children, you will see children that were listed on the list of missing and exploited children. So this is a problem. It is very large, and our data indicates that we have hundreds of people in Michigan. We don't feel the data's good. We know that we need to do something better to measure it. And this report is a baseline for measuring as we go forward about how effective we will be in remedying this problem. I really want to tell you that the most important part about this report and our efforts is that it's very victim-centered. You can't solve this problem without addressing, yes, the illegal activity, which we're actively doing in our office, but it really must be geared toward victims and how we treat those victims.
Thank you. Senator Emmons.
Thank you. I'll pull this closer. I noticed some folks are looking like they can't hear real well, and I have a very low voice, so I'll try to speak up. And I do appreciate the attendance this morning. This is outstanding. We realize, thank you so much for your comments and laying the groundwork there, Carol, because it was a privilege for me to be part of the task force and share the awareness piece. And that's the first step toward eradicating the scourge in Michigan. We understand that it's everywhere. It's in a rural county north of here. It's, of course, in southeast Michigan, and it's ginned up when you have events such as the NCAA Final Four, the North American Auto Show, even ArtPrize. There's increased traffic for trafficking, and it's unfortunate, but it's where people happen to congregate, they recognize opportunities. And as a legislator, when you're talking about a $32 billion industry, that's all tax-free. You're subsidizing it with your taxes, and they're paying nothing, not to mention the harm that's inflicted on the individual being trafficked. It's been a privilege for me as the person who's heading up the trafficking legislation in the Senate to have every one of these folks at this table be part of our committee and our committee structure and testify in front of our committee. And Carol's absolutely right. We are focused on the survivors. We are focused on those individuals who need to have us put in place the tools to go after the perpetrators. And my interest, frankly, was piqued by this very book about a girl in suburban Michigan. And a friend of mine who's a military veteran I've worked on legislation with before dropped this book off at my house. And prior to really looking into this and examining it, my stereotypical impression of trafficking was international. It was perhaps in the Ukraine, and certainly not in rural Michigan. And from all the accounts that we've heard, there is no one clear face of what a trafficker looks like in Michigan, and there's no one clear face about what a survivor or a victim looks like either. Very well could be the person next to you in church. It could be the soccer coach down the street. And that's what's scary about this whole thing. And more than that, what really, really impacts me as a mother and a grandmother, traffickers are looking for younger and younger individuals, girls and boys. And if we don't get a handle on this, our generations to come will pay dearly. We are vetting our legislation. We're making sure that we have the strongest in the country. We're vetting it with various institutions that are specialists in looking at trafficking legislation. And we're just grateful that the Attorney General has made this a priority as well. So I will stop, and thank you so much for having us.
And I believe most of you, when you walked in, you received a handout from the senator, a great takeaway for you as you proceed on your day and taking away a piece of knowledge about human trafficking. Now let's turn it over to Andy Soper.
Hi there. I founded the Manassa Project here in West Michigan about 3 years ago. Manassa Project exists to do three things. The first one is awareness, which is a difficult task in that normally awareness turns people from ignorance to willful apathy. I didn't know about that before. It's overwhelming, and now now I'm hungry and there's a Wendy's. So it's a difficult task, but that focuses on everything from the Kiwanis Club, groups like this, to high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools across the state. So we've reached about 45,000 people within the state within the past year and a half or two. The second thing we do is professionals education, focusing on law enforcement, social services, educators, and medical care professionals. More recently, we've done an awful lot of train the trainers, trying to get those who are training professionals to understand this information so they can go out and train their own communities. And the last thing we do is advocacy. So advocacy is a pretty broad term that covers everything from meeting with Senator Emmons and talking about safe harbor legislation to actually working with victims. So that started with us getting calls from juvenile detention, other social service agencies like Arbor Circle here in town, saying they thought they had someone that might be a victim of exploitation. Could we come and talk to them? Working with groups like Leslie's, we were able to have survivors walk through the door rather than me, who is a giant white guy. And I bring up the white thing because white males are the predominant buyers of sex in America, and so I represent the face of someone who would buy them, whether or not I intend to do that. We also opened a home a year and a half ago here in Grand Rapids for minor female victims of human trafficking. We've got 12 beds in the home, and we have girls from all over the state, everything from Detroit area up to the UP and back down. So those girls have the opportunity, and we kind of built our home around four main pillars: education, employment training, life skills, and trauma therapy. Not necessarily in that order. So the young women who live with us stay for an average of 6 to 18 months. 18 would be a long time. You risk institutionalism at that point. But the goal is to move them on into less restrictive, normal environments where they can thrive and go after what their dream is. At the basis of everything is empowerment. One thing I want to bring up is while this panel is about sex trafficking and this is a hideous crime and it draws our attention so quickly, there's something that we need to understand about human trafficking, in that sex trafficking is not the predominant form of trafficking in the world or even in America. To answer that really quickly, just a quick question that might seem crass, but I'm interested in the answer. How many of you bought sex this week? None is my guess, I hope. We'll take pornography out of the question, and some of you are like, okay. Probably none. But how many of you bought chocolate or coffee or wearing cotton or use electronics or drive a car or have a hearing aid? All these different types of materials, they're slave labor in the supply chain. So when we talk about where is trafficking in West Michigan, it's at Walmart and Target. And until we become better consumers and more intelligent consumers, we can focus on sex trafficking. We could even eradicate sex trafficking. But we will have missed our own implicit role in trafficking in America and around the world. So that's me.
Leslie.
Hello, my name is Leslie King, and I'm the founder of Sacred Beginnings Women's Transitional Program, in which I founded in 2005 as a residential safe haven to meet the needs of survivors. And when I say meet the needs of survivors, many survivors come, matter of fact, all of the survivors come with a bunch of trauma, a bunch of fear. They need a safe place to stay because they're afraid. The pimps are gonna find them, dope men are gonna find them, anyone is gonna find them, and they're gonna hurt them. All of us have been abused as children. Every survivor you see or meet, they'll tell you at the age of 8 on down, they've been molested by a relative, father, brother, grandfather, even a mother. And I know it's hard to fathom that, but that's the truth. I myself am a survivor of the world's most lucrative and deadliest game, sexual exploitation. At the age of 15 years old, instead of having slumber parties and playing with friends, I was coerced into the life of prostitution right here in Grand Rapids. I was seen as a 15-year-old prostitute, not a 15-year-old prostituted child. I have been free from the life since 2000 and vowed to do everything in my power to be heard and also help in freeing the others who find themselves trapped with no way out. I was hired by the Grand Rapids Police Department, imagine that, in the year 2003 for my expertise in the field of working with prostituted women and mentoring young girls. In the year 2003, when I was hired by the Grand Rapids Police Department, who better than go in the streets and talk to these women? Who better than go into drug houses and talk to these women? Who better to track pimps than me? Who better to go back into the underworld than me? You couldn't go back into the underworld.
I go there, but I take people that look cool with me. I just look like a mommy, but I take cool people with me.
But I can go. I can go. I'm well known. The women that I go to save are the same women that I used to stand on the corner with. So I'm trusted. And with all of us, our issues are trust issues. Why should we trust you? The people that were supposed to love us and care for us hurt us. What makes you any different? That's why we stay where we are. Many people ask us questions. Well, why can't you get out? Why are you doing what you do? You do what you do because you like what you do. You do what you do because you don't want to get a job. You do what you do because you're a drug addict. We do what we do because we train like soldiers to do what we do at a very young age. Today, Sacred Beginnings is still operating as the only safe house for survivors in Michigan. We're the only safe house. And people are like, well, why didn't we know about you? Why should I exploit my girls when nobody understood? We also have outreach teams that are survivors also. We go out into the streets to give women encouragement so they are unafraid when it's that time for them to leave. We have blessed bags. And in them blessed bags, we have cosmetics. We have everything they might need to be on them streets to survive. We also have information so they can call someone. They can call us. They can call us anytime and be like, Leslie, I just need to hear your voice. Or Leslie, I'm ready. And we jump in them trucks and we take off. Andy once told me, Leslie, you can't go chase Johns in a big blue truck. I said, oh, yes, I can, because I love it. This is an issue. This issue is very serious, especially here in Michigan. And that's because you're not looking for it. You're not looking for people to be sold, children to be sold here in Michigan. Many Michiganders would rather say that that only happens in Chicago, Miami, Detroit, or some other well-known city. That is why this city is an easy target for predators. It has been for many, many years.
Becky?
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
Many would rather turn the other way than admit we have a problem. Until you admit we have a problem, nothing will change. Thank you.
As a woman who's been involved in this issue for 3 decades, I love this table. I love this room. I've been a lonely abolitionist, a weirdo in my generation. My name's Rebecca McDonald. I'm the founder and president of Women at Risk International. We are in 40 countries. We address 14 different risk issues: honor killings, female circumcision, rape, AIDS, you name it. But we are most known for our fight against slavery because guess what? It's finally politically correct to talk about it. I'm so thankful. I take the crumbs from any table I can. And also, it is the fastest growing arm of crime. And so our law enforcement have finally, the good news is people at the highest levels recognize that we have a problem, and it's finally filtering down to those of us on the street. And also, all of our product that we sell in our stores is made in our safe houses, so it's anti-trafficking. 6 years ago, I got a phone call from Homeland Security in Detroit. And up until that time, we were an international organization. We were doing advocacy in America, but we were not doing aftercare here. We now partner with 8 safe houses. 3 of them are in Michigan. And Homeland Security came into my life because they were coming to Grand Rapids 2-3 times a week because trafficking is that bad here. And I began roaming the United States of America, meeting with the major cities and the major law enforcement people to discover and understand. And I was looking for the 17,500 international women of the 300,000 that are trafficked, around, of the close to 1 million that are trafficked internationally, and America is the 3rd highest destination country in the world. And what I discovered in the land of the free is that we sell our babies here. Our organization had just rescued a 2-week-old baby, sold for $200, rescued at 1 month old. And at that time, Homeland Security told me, yes, we're looking for a 6-month-old in America, pay-per-view live feed of an anal rape of a 6-month-old, which they never found. That's what we're doing in our country to our children. And the FBI estimates that in West Michigan alone, there are 2,400 minors for sale at any given time. We began working with safe houses, helping start safe houses around the United States of America. And we began a CFR training, civilian first responder training, because rather than whine and complain about whether or not our states and our cops and our law enforcement are prepared to handle this and whether or not we have the laws in place, I want to empower you as a civilian to be a circle of protection to your circle of influence. I want you to circle your cradle. And so we teach tomorrow, by the way, you're welcome to come, 8-hour training day in Getty in Holland. I have no clue where that is. Ask my staff at the table back there. But we will be teaching an 8-hour training day. We've done this 20 times now in the last year and a half. Homeland Security will be doing a law enforcement workshop, and we have a professional workshop for medical professionals and social workers. The exciting thing is this really works. 5 years ago, I had an intern in my office who helped me devise and invent and create the civilian first responder training. Today, she's a physician's assistant, and 3 nights ago, she called our office and said, on the job, in the ER, I have a 15-year-old whose mother is making her strip to pay her drug bill, the mother's drug bill. Boom, we called the proper authorities, and they were there within an hour. So training really works. This isn't rocket science. And it doesn't mean that we run out and be vigilantes. It means that we turn in the tips and the pieces of information that we all see every day and we blind our eyes to, and we turn it into the proper authorities. So we teach how to know the signs, how to respond, how not to respond, very important, and then how to share this with your circle of influence in an age-appropriate way. So West Michigan has 12 of the 15 demographics that we've identified, and these are global demographics because I've been working internationally my whole life. And how is it that we have 12 of the 15 demographics? And we spend a lot of time, we talk about the lures and the signs and all of those things. My passion today is to scratch where it itches, to answer your question and to open your eyes so that you can be that safe place. Our mission statement is to create circles of protection around women and children at risk. And if I can empower each one of you to be a safe place, then in this room we have 100 safe houses. Because your children and your circles of influence need to run to you. We give out 15 job descriptions tomorrow, and it's like, if you're a cosmetologist, how do you be an abolitionist? I'm not calling you to be Mother Teresa or Andy and go start a safe house. I'm calling you from the industry that you already walk, whether you're a healthcare professional, whether you're a social worker, a mom at a sleepover. 14-year-old Shauna Newell goes to a sleepover in Pensacola, Florida, and is sold for $300,000 on the internet. Where was the mom? I'm calling each of us from whatever walk of life we're in, from the sanctity of our homes and our own careers, to rise up and open our eyes and be to our children and other people's children what we would want someone to be to our child. And to Leslie, when that time in her life comes where she's about to make a choice and you can step into her life. Yesterday at the Senate, I had a survivor with me. And all the way back from speaking to the Senate subcommittee, she said, Becky, if someone had been there to listen to me, my life would have been different. That's all I needed. I needed somebody to be there. I'm just calling to you from the deepest recesses of my mommy heart. I'm just a mom. And no, I don't look cool in the red light district, but I take cool looking people, and then I'm the mommy that steps into their life. I'm the sister. I'm the circle of protection. I'm that unconditional person that says, you know what? I will be there for you come hell or high water. And it's not a 2-day, 2-week, 2-year program. It's for life, because you're family now. And that's what it takes. It takes a commitment to never give up on these people, because everybody gives up on them. You want to be different? Never give up on them. Never. You would never give up on your own children. So we must do for them what we would do for our own. So I'm just calling on you to use your voice, use whatever career you're walking in, whatever passions, skills, and gifts you already have, to step into this issue and be an abolitionist and set the captive free. JFK made a statement on June 11th when he addressed the nation, speaking of a different kind of slavery and demeaning of mankind, and he said, "Those who do nothing are inviting shame. Those who act boldly are recognizing right. It's time to act above all in our daily lives. The rights of every man, woman, and child are diminished when the rights of one are threatened." So this is a call today to do something. Do not walk away with apathy. You do that and you're inviting shame. Shame on you. But be that. If nothing else, just be it to your own circle of protection. Be that safe place. Be that sanctuary, that safe house. And we can change Grand Rapids if this room alone walks out there and says, "I'm going to do something. So help me God," till it takes every last breath in my body. So that's what we're all here for. We're here to set people free and give them a safe place to rewrite the stories of their lives, wrap arms of love around them, give them unconditional safety and security to rewrite their life and start over. And that's what it's all about.
And on that note, we want to bring you into the conversation now. I know we have a roving microphone, so if we could begin asking two microphones. Okay, so if someone would like to start, I'd like you to say your name, where you're from, and you can begin asking our wonderful panel some questions.
The name of the book is The Slave Across the Street. We actually do have a few copies with us. And the author is Teresa Flores. She, too, has been in Michigan multiple times, and it's her story of her suburban life when she was a 15-year-old in the Detroit area.
Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Sheila Bartle with AAUW, and I'd like to ask Andy if you could explain to us your comment about trafficking involving, I presume, employees of Walmart and Target?
No, I'm talking about what they're selling.
Okay, could you
Sure.
clarify that?
Sure. So let's think about the type of. We'll start with just chocolate, right? Let's ruin Easter for you right now. So the types of chocolate is mainly harvested in 2 countries in Africa, right? And they're using the worst forms of child labor to harvest the cocoa plant, right? So kids are denied medical access to their family, access to education, and they're working with dangerous materials, pesticides, machetes, on and on, climbing trees to cut this down. Now, I don't have a problem with child labor. I want to put that out there. At 11, I was working with my dad. Technically, I was a child laborer. I'm talking about the worst form of child labor so that you see the difference. That cocoa is then sold to major companies, Hershey, Mars, Cadbury, across the board. It's then mixed into their supply chain, and it comes to us on Easter morning so our kids can have a treat. That's one example, right? We could talk about coffee. We could talk about the fact that Uzbekistan puts out over $1 billion in import in cotton every year. One of their main buyers for years was Walmart. So we can buy T-shirts for $4.88, not $4.99, mind you, because it's Walmart. $4.88. And we can be made comfortable by those materials. There are sites, free2work.org, free2work.org, slaveryfootprint.org, goodguide.com. These are sites that you can go and do your own research on what labels are slave-free. We did this at Mars Hill with our youth. They did their own research in either food, electronics, or clothing. To find out how much slavery was in their own lives, and then they wrote letters to companies saying, I love your clothes, but I can't buy them anymore until you stop using slave labor. And yes, we got letters back saying, well, we don't use slave labor. We have a pastor who I have dubbed the corporate assassin because this woman can do research like none else, and was able to use their own website and information to say, you buy clothing from these places in Jordan, which are run by Korean companies, which use slave labor, so I'm sorry, you're wrong. And the response was, well, thank you for your time and goodbye. Like, that's what you do. You have to go out and do your own research because injustice is far too easy and practical. You don't have to do anything, and injustice continues. So anything I think this panel would call you to today is going to complicate your life and make it impractical a bit.
No.
Next question.
Morning. My name is Andrew Norden. I live here in town. I'm here this morning representing Crossroads Bible Church right downtown. In that capacity, I'm wondering what each of us do as citizens, but in a practical, realistic way, without being one lone wolf trying to save the world and trying to tackle a huge problem and butting up against frustration and eventually giving up because we can't do it alone. What's a practical way that we can team together, things that we can do, things that we can put into action right away?
Leslie, why don't you start with that?
One thing you can do is get with an organization. Get with one of these organizations. I think all of us have a list of what the houses may need or what the organizations may need. Partner with that organization. Walk alongside that organization. Because every organization needs something. Every survivor needs something, whether it's an adult or a child. I know Sacred Beginnings is 18 and over. Andy's is, 18 and under. Just talking with Becky, those safe houses that she was speaking of are children.
4-year-olds.
You know what I mean? Our babies. So partnering with these organizations to help survivors, as with the senators and everything they're putting together, everything is circled around survivors.
I could say we have a brochure of how to get involved, but we have 700 volunteers at our headquarters alone on 44th Street. We would never survive and keep our overhead so low if we didn't have that. And this coming art prize, we have an artist in the room who's going to be doing an anti-trafficking thing. She's right behind you. And we just sent an email asking for volunteers to help hand out brochures at ArtPrize on anti-trafficking, that war is in, she's doing it with war. And so we need volunteers for something that simple, but we use, we have men's construction teams that come in with sledgehammers and they love to hit things, and they demoed Sweet D for us. And so everything from, stuffing an envelope to pricing. We have women that come in and price all our 3,000 products from our safe houses. They think they're at Santa's elves in a workshop because they get to play with all the pretty jewelry. Up to actual teams. We just took a self-defense team from a church in Chicago that went and taught 6 of our safe house staff how to teach their men and women. We have a safe house just of men, rescued men, how to do self-defense, not to beat somebody up, but to get away. So the list is endless of how you can empower survivors, because their needs are as diverse as your daughter and your son. We are raising children, not because they're children, but because they have that many needs. And so, we could talk forever about the ways to get involved. And for sure, any organization that is worth their salt will give you 88 different ways and you can pick what fits you.
I know, Senator, you want to add to this. Briefly before your comment, could we get the name of the artist out there, please?
I told her I'd bring attention to her.
My name is Pamela Alderman, and I've exhibited the last 4 years at the Amway Hotel. I did the 4,000 paper birds this past year with the autistic children. And so this year, Becky and I were working together to highlight human trafficking. I lived in Asia. I bumped up closer than I ever want to bump up to human trafficking. It's very dark, which we already know. And so I'm just coming to these lectures. I'm using a paintbrush. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to form what I'm going to say. Last year I had an audience of about 70,000. So it's a moment that I have, a platform I have, and I'm just trying to use the platform God has given me.
And I'd just like to say that when you're dealing with something this dark, the arts, music, art, all the arts are so helpful, because this is a subject that needs a sanctuary. And so I appreciate even the flowers here this morning, because it's hard to process this kind of brokenness. And actually the story that she's going to be highlighting is the story of a baby in India that we're dealing with that's tied to a pole, was put in a cardboard box when she was born. Her mother, who's also a slave, was not allowed to hold her so that she would grow up to not know love. She is beaten black and blue every time she cries, and she's tied with a red cord to a pole. And I have met repeatedly with her, the madam who beats her, and to discover that the real person that owns her is a government official, which is why we cannot do a police raid, because she'll disappear into the system then. And so that is specifically what we're focusing on in this particular thing, is this child and others. Her name is Sweetie, that's her real name. The Sweeties whose cries we never hear and who need to be set free.
So if anyone wants to eventually volunteer, they know how to get a hold of you. Thank you so much. Senator.
Oh, thank you. And just, you know, if you can do nothing more, we will take your email address and never abuse it. We keep our trafficking addresses totally separate. So you can be apprised of where the legislation is and what's moving and how the process is working, and other things that are affecting legislation and the trafficking issue itself. But beyond that, if you have an organization that has a couple $100, you can buy a case of 1,000 bars of soap this size that any hotel is required to provide. And on the back it says, are you being forced to do anything you do not want to do? Have you been threatened if you try to leave? And it has on the back the 800 number, the national hotline for human trafficking. It's 888-3737-888. And it is remarkable, the responses they get, especially when you get events in your area like ArtPrize, where you know people are coming in and staying at the hotels. And it works. They notify, if they get a phone call, they notify the local officials, and they follow up with the report that's reported. So it's a very simple thing. Many areas in the Detroit area, many churches down there have decided not to do this just when events are being held, but to do it on an ongoing basis for those hotels that will take them. It's a very simple thing, and actually it is Teresa Florey's brainchild. It's called SOAP, Save Our Adolescents from Prostitution.
Carol, you want to add something?
You know, I do, because I think I'm the representative from state government. You will never replace what volunteers do and people who are in the community. The proper role of state government is to recognize when we have a problem, to organize our responses, and to empower people who are working at the grassroots at the level of the individual that they interface with. I do want to add one little thing about what we can do effectively at the state level, besides the training, which has to be organized within every branch, including our medical communities and our law enforcement. That is something we can do. More than that, that the Attorney General's office is meeting with industry located in Michigan to address the issue of human trafficking. Right now, we are going through all of our transportation mechanisms. And I have to tell you, our industries are working very effectively with us on how to identify human trafficking and to report that, and to look within their own industries about when they see it. So we support what our locals are doing, encourage that, and our role at the state level is to do the things around this issue that bring awareness and training and improve our laws and prosecute those who have broken the laws, and to help our locals.
Can I jump in just a second? So we run the risk of ghettoizing trafficking organizations as places that people can send money, but if money can solve it, it's probably not a problem. So I love hearing the volunteer things, but if you really want to solve trafficking, we're chasing our tails if we're just treating victims. This is about demand and supply reduction. So the best thing for a church to do that I would think is get involved in some sort of mentoring organization, or start one themselves, or just be a good neighbor. When we hear stories like this, we tend to circle the wagons around our own family. My wife and I have 4 kids. And if my only concern is my 4 kids, who, by the way, have 2 parents, our computers in our living room, if they have access to it at all, they can ride from one tree to the other in front of my house while I'm out there watching them. My kids are at low risk, really are. However, the kids around the corner whose mom and dad are working 2 jobs, 2, 3 jobs to keep the lights on, and I see them babysitting their 4-year-old whatever cousin or niece or nephew, and they're 8 themselves, and they're out running around at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night in the summer. If I'm so focused on protecting my own kids, I miss them, right? So this is about being a good citizen, not outsourcing our ministry or our service or whatever you want to call it to somebody else. If you can get involved in one more kind of thought around who you're getting involved with, the stories we hear on 2020 and 60 Minutes about trafficking victims are largely white middle-class girl from the burbs who got lured away on Facebook. And yes, that happens about 25% of the time, 25, 30% of the time. The other 70% are children of color from poverty. That story is not being told effectively. When we hear about human trafficking, we think of the movie Taken, right? First off, who lets their 16-year-old daughter go to France alone? That's the face we see. So the face of human trafficking is an upper middle class white girl in popular culture. It's not the reality for the bulk of it. Yeah, again, yes, it happens, and yes, it's equally horrible. It is not the bulk of the children. We need to pay attention to that. So your involvement in human trafficking is being a good neighbor, engaging in the reality that human trafficking is a symptom of a bunch of other cultural ills, poverty being chief among them. Engaging that conversation is incredibly important when we're talking about ending trafficking.
But Andy, I really object to the idea that it's not white kids too, because it's oral sex parties in upper middle class schools. That's the Teresa Flores story, and that's where all these kids converge together, and a trafficker sends them a text message and says, hey honey, you're doing this. And it's not poverty, it's materialism. They want a $400 Prada bag and they don't want to work for it so they can make it in one night. So the newest cutting edge of trafficking is 15 to 18-year-old cool girls at school recruiting all of our children, poor, rich, doesn't matter. They're targeting the bubble, and the more the bubble, the more innocent, quote unquote, you keep your kids and ignorant of the real issues, and the less you are a parent that watches your teenagers, and his oldest is 10, but when that 10-year-old starts going to parties, that's when his real work starts, because that's when they're interfacing with all this other stuff. And so it is, he's right, the majority is poverty. Poverty is a huge, huge lure, but so is materialism, and so is innocence. Rhoda Kershaw was raised in a Christian home, went to a Christian school, and said, Becky, I fell into the sewer because I didn't know it exists. I was raised to be naive. That's the story of West Michigan. Naivety makes your kids a target. So they're all, if they're a kid, they're a target. Period, no returns. And yes, certain things bring them into the eye of the trafficker more than others, and poverty and minorities are definitely at risk, but so are your children. They're all of our children are at risk. And I want this to be just any kid is at risk. And running between trees is great, because it's when they go around the tree and someone else sees them and you don't know about it, that you have to get your eyes and antenna up as a mom and as a grandmother and as a neighbor. I get calls from neighbors who see things across the street and call it in, and so we call the proper authorities. So this, right now, statistically, he's absolutely right. But I'm telling you, they're targeting everybody, and they're targeting every kid. And the youth culture, because of the way it is, because oral sex is not viewed as sex, it's being offered like a back rub. There's a whole book on it. And we have girls, we'll show snippets tomorrow of girls saying, I grew up in a good home with loving parents, but I needed my stuff.
Becky, I'm going to allow, I know we have some young adults here, and I think it would be nice, I know it's a little intimidating when we are in a room full of adults, but I want you guys to have the opportunity to ask a question too. So for any of the young adults that are here, I know for a class, if you guys have any questions about what you are learning today, I'll let you be the next question, so I'll let you mull on that. But we have one more. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ashley Bound.
If you can talk directly right into the mic so everyone can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, maybe it's not on.
Okay. It's fine. I'm from Grand side to that is prevention, and Andy kind of touched on this a little bit, but just kind of the normal people, I guess I was wondering what kind of advice you had for us to try and work with prevention, because we can recover and help victims as much as we, as much as we can, but it's probably going to stop unless we start doing things to prevent it.
Senator, why don't you start with that?
Ooh, that's a great question regarding prevention. And yes, I will. She talked about, what we're talking about. We're helping survivors. We're helping to recover victims, we hope. And her question was, what about prevention? We're never going to do anything but spin our wheels unless we really get to the point of prevention here in Michigan. And I think Becky raised some of these points yesterday or 2 days ago in our committee. But we do have a piece of legislation that would require, and it's very controversial because you're making people very, very uncomfortable. It would require, if you are a person who is purchasing sex, that you would be put on a list, and it would be a public list. And not just for minors, but for any sex. Now, there are two camps there. There's the one camp that believes it should be only if you're purchasing sex from minors. Some of the rest of us believe that it should be for anyone who's purchasing sex. So that, as a legislator, we know, and I don't know, Becky, you can give the statistics on this, but we know that that is highly effective.
This is the study that showed that 88% of the 100 buyers of sex and 100 non-buyers, 88% of the men who were buyers said that they would not buy if they thought they were going to be listed on a sex registry.
Carol?
The objective of the package of legislation we had was twofold. One, reduce the demand and take away the profit. You really need to address those things when you're looking holistically. You look at the list of pieces of legislation and the focus, there are things that change the penalty for sex with a minor. We also have things that would remove the profit. Forfeiture is part of this, and that bill is moving. We have a nuisance bill. So essentially, if you're in law enforcement, you want the deterrent effect. You want the penalty increased, you want the demand reduced, and you want to send a very strong message to people who would profit in this area that you will remove their profit, and there is a very large penalty out there for engaging in this. So the entire package, as Senator Emmons will tell you, is really addressed at preventing and deterring this in the future.
All right, we have 10 minutes left, and I believe we've got one student there who has a question to ask. Your name?
My name's Michael.
And Michael, what's your question?
If you're looking for signs of human trafficking, what would those signs be?
Leslie?
Okay, I want to ask one question. I heard Becky, and I heard Andy, and I heard the senators, and I want to ask a question. If you're looking for a predator, what gender would it be?
Better be both.
I guess like any kind of predator, gender.
Would you guys think it was a male? Wrong. It would be a female.
Not doing the sexual, but doing the scamming.
Looking just like me.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to move. It's very easier to move the children or the other females due to the fact that we wouldn't be noticed. We would not be noticed. And, Becky was talking about the stuff or whatever, because women come with a lot of things. Women compare themselves to other women, and for some reason, we always come up short. So there's always some form of low self-esteem, low self-worth, and I don't care who it is. We smell you. We see you. We come with a sixth sense. So we know your weakness. And they prey on you, and then they take you to the pimp or to whoever because they're trained to do it that way. Because if they don't, they'll get beaten. This is the belly of the underworld, and I know it because I lived it for 20 years. We can do all the statistics we want to do, which is great. But until you get down in there, that's when you'll know.
Leslie, so for the young adults that are here, what can they look for? What signs can they look for?
You can look for, like, if you see somebody with a younger child. If that child is looking down and won't look at you, if that child, they're holding hands, but that child is pulling away, call someone. Call someone, because something is wrong.
If you're a college girl or a high schooler and the cool girl at school invites you to a party that turns sour, make sure you have someone to call, because 15 to 18-year-old girls are recruiting 9-year-old girls who can't drive home. And so the 17-year-old girl in New Jersey a couple years ago took her 5-year-old, 7-year-old sister to a party. If you're a college kid and some other college kid is recruiting girls to go be strippers to pay for college, find out more about that, because they use women to recruit women because your guard is down for women. It was a girl that invited Shauna Newell to a birthday party, and she was sold on the internet for $300,000. The worst abuse I've ever had to deal with has been done by a woman trafficker. I tell people this is not a problem between men and women. Yes, the buyers are men, but the traffickers, the ones who do the scamming, at least the initial scamming, are usually women. And now they're teenage girls. And so that's why your guard has to change. We have to raise our antenna. And yes, the signs, we talk about 22 signs for your question and 22 lures. The lure may be a modeling job. The lure may be a voice, sing. And that's what happened to Rhoda Kershaw. She was scammed for her voice and sold to the Japanese mafia. The lure may be a job, babysitting job. 2 Liberty College girls responded to an email or a thing in the paper for babysitting, and it turned out to be trafficking. So you just have to be so skeptical of everything, unfortunately.
Carol?
We could talk about lures for a long time and signs.
Correct.
I'm going to touch on something just 30 seconds because we haven't hit it, and that's your internet. Kids, if at all possible, at every socioeconomic level, have it. And you need to know that if we check a major event, call it Super Bowl, call it anything, we can go online and we can check the increased ads, and people are sold, absolutely sold, on online, on the internet, and people are trafficked through that. We have a major problem right now with the Federal Communications Decency Act, and Attorney General Schuette and a number of other AGs across the country advocating for that federal law to be changed, because people are allowed to do a lot of things on the internet right now that they should not be allowed to do. It is not a safe world out there. We have an active program in which we go to schools all across the state, and we train children at all levels of school, age-appropriate training about how to be safe online. But you need to know that's a real danger. I have an attorney that I work with who says my children may not have friends over unless I collect all of the electronic gadgets at the door. No one is allowed to have them in my house when they're there. No one is taking pictures of anyone else while they're there, because it just never leaves the internet. So, thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, one of the larger issues around human trafficking is that we kind of deal in fear. So we can continue to throw stories and stats at you, but which induce kind of a fear response in you, or shock or terror. This is about practicality, not hyperbole. So if we can engage this issue in a very practical way so that you are not afraid that your children will be taken, but empower them to see clearly, and that would be talking with them about sex, from everything from anatomy to pleasure. If a girl knows how to say yes to what she likes, then she will know what she does not like and will say no. That's the type of conversation we can have that can actually engage these issues. We're not going to eradicate crazy evil. And so when we hear horrible, terrible stories, we can do everything we can and those will happen. But what we can do is be prepared, We can visit sites like polarisproject.org, right, which is the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, to just educate yourself on what's going on and how you engage the issue practically. You don't have to run out and tell everybody you see. You wait for those opportunities, and you live a lifestyle of justice. That's really what's at stake here. So great questions on what am I looking for. More often than not, you're looking for the most vulnerable, right? Someone dating an older, controlling male, having access to money, cash, and clothes that they normally don't have access to, the need for STD tests consistently, pregnancies, abortion. These are things that we look for. Branding, and I don't mean hot metal on skin more often than not. I mean something subtle like a pimp's name on their fingernails. That's what you're looking for. And you know that because you're involved in that child's life. Not because you spot them on the street and you don't know who they are necessarily. You know them, these kids, because you're involved in the life of a kid who's in high risk. Trafficking doesn't end by kicking down doors. Trafficking ends by early education on healthy relationships, good sexuality, and being a good citizen.
I know that in the respect of time and everyone taking the time to come to this, it is already 10 o'clock. And I know there's still many questions and conversations that can continue. If you can stay, I'm sure the panelists would be willing to chat a little more. But I thank you so much for coming out and being engaged in this issue and asking those tough questions. And I hope that you all walk away with a little more knowledge on this. So a round of applause for our panelists this morning. And something to note, I believe there are some booths back there for you to grab some more information. But again, thank you so much for coming out, and I'll turn it over to Elise.
And a thank you to Jennifer as well for taking time out of her schedule to be our moderator this morning. And I again want to thank Gilmore Catering and Eastern Floral for their contributions in support of this event today. You were given comment cards with your programs. I'd like to remind you to fill those out, and please leave them with one of the Acton staff members as you leave. I hope that you agree with me that this is an event that will change lives, but it's now in your hands. You now bear the responsibility that you've learned here and take it out and share it. And that is the way that we are going to begin to see the end of the scourge of modern slavery that we know as human trafficking. Thank you all again for coming.